never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change.
Hey, Rob, we're back for our second episode about Greyhawk. Greyhawk 2, you could even say.
Greyhawk 2, Electric Boogaloo. Greyhawk
Yes.
2, The Return. Son of Greyhawk. Greyhawk 2, Back to Greyhawk. Greyhawk Returns. Greyhawk The Return. Here we are. It's been a while since we talked about Greyhawk, so it feels like a long time.
Since episode 80, link in the show notes, and we're back to talk about it again for you, our Patreon listeners, because in one of the strangest but most interesting sections of the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide is about 30 pages or so devoted to the world of Greyhawk, to Flaness, to Oerth. And it's weird for a number of reasons. Number one, because it's like a weird abbreviated world guide. Two, it's kind of nestled in the chapter about creating campaigns. Three, it kind of replaces the information about how to build a world. It's just super fascinating to me.
Yeah, before we go any further, I really have to address the dragon in the room, which is that the sphere, the planet of Oerth, is is the center of Greyhawk, and it's the first time I've seen a pronunciation guide for Oerth. Yes. And according to the DMG, Oerth is actually pronounced Orth or Oith, which just makes me think of
straight.
We're doing some adventuring in Oith here. I love to go around adventuring Oith. I love running casinos in Oith.
I love hearing the boys, Choip and Oith, Cheap.
Just the boys. We love it. Gabagool, Oith. Anyway, I'm never gonna be able to stop thinking about that. But there are, Matt, you're a lot more familiar with Greyhawk than I am. I have everything I know about it. I've mostly absorbed from playing adventures or other things. How much of this is new or adjusted information before?
Almost none of it is new. I have noticed like some minor adjustments, some names changed, some genders flipped, but like nothing is really new here that I could find. Obviously, when you take something that is full of more information and distill it down in the process of selecting what you include, that's also sort of a change in that you're making a choice in what you spend more time on. But really, nothing here is new. This is mostly from two sources, as far as I could tell, is the original 1980 World of Greyhawk folio and from the City of Greyhawk, the Gym of Flaness box set by David, a couple of British guys, including one who, this is getting real far afield, but like did Peter Venkman-esque parapsychology experiments on people in Cambridge or Oxford or something like that. It got really weird with it. Who knows if he is connected to like MK Ultra or anything, but he was a real weird dude. But so it's drawn from those two things, edited down by the 2024 D&D team, and presented just exactly right in the middle of our Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah, there are a number, Matt already alluded to this, a number of if not baffling, strange decisions about this. We mentioned before in our first part of the DMG guide, but also in some of our reviews of the more recent Wizards of the Coast books, that on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, they've really been doing what I might describe as like a greatest hits, including Vecna, why can I never remember the subtitle of that stupid adventure? Something of Ruin.
Eve of Ruin.
And now bringing back Greyhawk. And there's a lot of curious things about this. One, I think is like most forefronted in my mind is that these greatest hits are not that great. These are this is like, you know, Vecna was centered around all of these archmages and various personages from D&D's history, and I do not think that they're particularly compelling or interesting, and not, it was not necessary to dig them back up. You know, we are getting a return to the Keep in the Borderlands, which is a perfectly fine adventure, but I'm not sure that we need to revisit it again. And in recent years, they've also like dredged up some of the OG adventures, some of which are good and hold up, but you know, are they so good that they need to be reprinted 50 years later? I don't know. So this is a curious decision, which has, you know, to my mind, culminated in this condensed version of the Greyhawk lore that we already have in the center of the DMG, and it is like Matt said, a very curious decision.
Carl Sargent, that's the parapsychologist. Anyway, yeah, it's super curious. So on the one hand, like, it's cool that more people are getting introduced to Greyhawk, and that you have a sample of a Pantheon, for example, and this cool fold-out hex map that you could use. On the other hand, there's 30 pages here, which I'll point out is essentially the same length as the original folio booklet. But because of art and layout and font size and emphasis, there's not enough here that I think it would be enough to be, again, even a bare bones campaign setting that you can use. And then on the other hand, when I first started reading it, I noticed these little purple aside boxes that were like, hey, this is... Well, here's how the calendar works in Greyhawk. Here's a little insert box that says your world's calendar and some useful points on things you want to consider when building your calendar. And I was like, oh, there's going to be one of these on every page. And as I read through, there's only like 2 others on adventures and organizations and on the past. And it's not enough that if you're reading, because I thought, okay, since this isn't a complete guide to Greyhawk, it's an overview of Greyhawk that teaches you how to build a world as you go, using this as an example. But it's also not that either. It's something in between all of those things, which is, I think, why we're most baffled to talk about this, why we foisted this whole episode on you, the Patreon listener, because it just doesn't fit anywhere else. It is very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's good that the DMG includes some setting stuff. The 2014 DMG is extremely thin on this, and has always been one of my complaints. And Wizards of the current iteration of Wizards of the Coast is allergic to any sort of like gazetteer or campaign setting book. And you know that we here at Dungeon Master of None love a big, meaty campaign setting book and are always excited to buy them and read through them. So I guess I shouldn't complain too much, but it is, like Matt said, it's just 30 pages. And as we will discuss, what is included in those 30 pages is as curious to me as the decision to include Greyhawk itself.
All right, let's try and say some things about this that are not complaints, that if you have this book and are interested in using it, what you've got here. I will say that if you're curious about Greyhawk and the absolute like drudgery of reading some of the older books where all of the interesting gems are hidden behind a complete stat breakdown of how many men-at-arms, archers, and naval ships every nation can muster, and you get bored. This is like a fun introduction to certain aspects of Greyhawk, and I think I like that. So it's like, hey, if you're interested in Greyhawk and you already have the DMG, well, you might as well read the first couple sections of this. That's nice.
Yeah, the nice thing that I will say is that if you are interested in running one of those OG adventures that we mentioned or talked about, if you want to do a if you want to run Princess of the Apocalypse, if you want to run Tomb of Horrors or the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth from Quests of the Infinite Staircase, this is actually a pretty useful tool. All of the existing or reworked adventures that connect to Greyhawk are mentioned in this gazetteer, or most of them are, and you are given a location, opportunity, and some background. I think that would be actually a really good use of this gazetteer. Not the best, but it is, I think, actually the most useful if you are planning to run your players through one of those old school adventures. I do think it is actually a useful tool for that.
Yeah, the next thing is, like, if you want a world map that you can use, the fold out included in the physical copy of the DMG by Mike Shelley, who's done, I think, like every map for the past who knows how long for Wizards and does it well in their in-house style, is perfectly great. It's the original fold-out map by Darlene Pellick is, something that I think everyone who had that really treasures. Plus, but if you don't want this, there's also some great maps online that are posted on, I think, Greyhawk Online /GH maps that are done by Anna B. Meyer. But I have to say, the updated map, it's nice. It's got a hex grid on it. A lot of the names are changed, but like in a good way. Like the tiger and the wolf barbarians are renamed to the names they use for themselves. The original map kind of contains spoilers for Greyhawk ahead, actually. The Scarlet Brotherhood, a secret organization that few people know about, is just labeled on the map. And in the new map, it's labeled Shar. And your players would have to explore that place to know that it's actually controlled by, evil fantasy Nazis.
Yeah, and I just want to build on Matt's original point. This is condensed, but it is just what you need and not a bunch of the other fantasy stuff that you might, or that we like to read. But yeah, you don't need to know how many like units there are in the Northern Flennes army, or how many people live in the Artisans Quarter of Greyhawk. And it's very, very good about like NPCs and locations, which, if we're being honest as a GM, are the most important things. So for all of our complaints, this gazetteer does give you a lot of what you need as a GM. Not everything, but a lot of the more important parts.
All right, Rob, you started this episode by saying you don't know a lot about Greyhawk, and I do. I've never run a campaign in Greyhawk, but I've played in one, and I've read, I think, all of the books up through the beginning of 3rd edition.
You have run adventures set in Greyhawk, though.
Yes, okay. You have. Okay. Now
and I've played in adventures set in Greyhawk. I've never played in a campaign. I'm just saying, there's lots of like individual adventures that take place in Greyhawk, and I have
absolutely
But
But I've never, let's say, okay, I'm running a Greyhawk campaign. Here's the Greyhawk campaign setting to my players. Make any kind of Greyhawk. Okay, here's my question to you: is, having read this, being less familiar with Greyhawk, what is Greyhawk about according to this 30 pages? Like, what's your best description? And I'll give you. Do I agree with that or not?
Well, the book goes ahead and tells you that it's about living history, Matt. That it's all these like ancient civilizations and evil gods and layers upon layers of evil and archmages and deep magic history that has built up to make Greyhawk what it is today. That is presumably the explanation for why there are so many mega dungeons and ancient ruins. I have something to say about that, but I'm curious if you think that's correct.
No, I agree with that. Like, Greyhawk is a setting where you've had 2 evil empires in the distant past and a couple more, again, kind of 2 evil kingdoms in the not so distant past, and they're all pretty evil and bad. And they had really powerful magic, probably more powerful than most people have access to today. They left all sorts of ruins that are just begging to be explored. And then today, I would say about half or maybe the majority of the world is either kind of a lawless wilderness or controlled by corrupt or outwardly evil polities, nations, and states. So the idea of evil kind of being on the ascendant is correct. I think they nailed that one theme of Greyhawk pretty well.
Yeah, there's lots of cults, there's lots of evil organizations, there's multiple looming evil demigods or evil gods, and the classic fantasy stuff, but definitely there's not like a big good guy nation or all that many like good guy organizations that are there to, the forces of good such that they are scattered, and you the adventurer are needed to stop all of these ascendant threats, which is a good setting for a fantasy role-playing adventure game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into the actual text, because the first thing we're presented with after that premise is Greyhawk conflicts, and we're given 3: chromatic dragons, elemental evil, and Ayuz or Uz, the evil, the demigod.
Yeah.
I think this is where I have like my first problem, which is that all of these are like great threats, and we're given an example of how to build a 1 through 20 level campaign about these. I would say that one of the premises, one of the conflicts of Greyhawk that seems kind of baked in is if you've got this evil ascendant kind of mostly wilderness campaign location, like one of the campaign types is your players start off as low-level adventurers, raiding some dungeons, getting power, and then they decide what to do with that power, right? And that's not really presented as an option because I don't think it really fits with the 5e play style. So instead, we kind of get these, okay, there's a big, bad, evil organization that's going to take over the world. Here's how you build a campaign over fighting them.
Yeah, and what do I want to say about this? I mean, these are good. I mean, if you were looking for large scale threats, they're good ones. And if you listen to our tier list review, I mostly liked Princes of the Apocalypse. I think it's a pretty decent adventure. Inconsistent, but like it's not the worst, or it's just not the worst thing to center a campaign around. But Rise of Tiamat, which is not listed here, but just generally, I don't know that like this. I don't know. This is maybe a niche complaint. I don't know that like chromatic dragons are a particularly good 20 level campaign premise. Because
also, does it fit with Greyhawk? There's not a lot of information about like Tiamat given in Greyhawk until I think 3rd edition, and chromatic dragons as an organized threat doesn't quite fit. Also found it weird that this one doesn't mention Rise of Tiamat, yet the next one mentions Princes of the Apocalypse.
Strange
when the
omission.
Plot of this one clearly very similar to Rise of Tiamat. A cult tries to bring Tiamat from her, from hell to the real world.
Right. And if you did want to follow this chromatic dragon arc, it would fit pretty closely with Rise of Tiamat. But again, if you go back to the tier list, part of the problem is that it's hard to sustain that adventure over 20 levels. It's just weird to me because your big bad is a dragon and your players cannot really like face a dragon in combat for many levels, and even then not so much. Elemental evil is a better fit. You've got Prince of the Apocalypse, you've got Temple of Elemental Evil, you've got lots of options here. It's still probably too big. I don't know. What do we think about Ayuz as a big campaign, big scale, big bad?
Yeah, like I mean, this is absolutely one of the big bads. He's Greyhawk Sauron, right? He rules a cursed land. He will definitely, now that he is free, be making some kind of attempt to conquer the rest of the world, and has a good chance of succeeding. I think some of the like detailed information given doesn't really set you up for success. Like, my impression, given the earlier published material, is that the Horned Society, a group of also evil, demon-worshipping, kind of squabbling bandit kings, don't actually like Ayuz. Like, he controls them through like a coup, but there's not a lot given where it's like, hey, maybe players will have a chance to play these factions within, this evil organization off each other, which nations might be allies. Like, this campaign, I think, begs to end in some kind of big scale conflict or war. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, each of these sections about conflicts in the book is one paragraph about the threat itself, one paragraph, maybe a sentence about its goals, and then a little bit about the arc and each of sort of like the tiers, level 1 through 4, 5 through 10, so on and so forth. And the Ayuz arc is the most detailed, but there's not a lot to work with here. Unless they are referencing a different adventure or somewhere else in the book or a different published adventure. And yeah, I mean, you can build on it, but it's a little thin.
Yeah, if I was picking 3, I would probably keep Ayuz as one of the big conflicts. The other one would be like building a kingdom of their own. And then maybe another one would be revolution or like war with the absolutely evil, corrupt the Great Kingdom in Eastern Flyness, and those would be mine. But yeah, players forging their own way in the world is, I think, the perfect theme for Greyhawk, but it just doesn't fit here. So then we're on to like factions and organizations, magic and Greyhawk, the mysteries of Greyhawk. And I think this is nice because you can read the older material and basically find almost all of this information, yet you have to dig for it and maybe use your imagination a little bit. But here it's like, here's, the top interesting locations and factions. I like that. I like putting that at the beginning of a description of a world. Again, the Scarlet Order, or I think it was, originally the Scarlet Brotherhood, perfect change to the Scarlet Order. As, again, Sului's supremacist, evil Nazi assassin monks. They're a perfect bad guy.
Yeah, I like this section too because it gives you a lot of hooks. And if you are interested in the Scarlet Order or the Bat Folk of Hepmonaland or, White Plume Mountain or any of these things, there's not much here, but that information exists and you can go look it up. You can go find it. If you are interested in any of these, elements of magic or factions, and this is an interesting section. There's a little bit more to work with, a little bit more interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, the advice given here on adventures and organizations is a good start. It doesn't really have anything about the examples of organizations we're given don't all have, like 2 are good, 1 is neutral, 1 is evil, but it would be, I think, a little more interesting to have some factions that have really the same areas of interest, but very differing like opinions and goals within that sphere of interest in your game world. And that would be my advice that I would add there.
Yeah, and they also throw, again, use Renown, this system that we've been trying to get D&D players to use for 10 years now that really like has failed to really like take root, but I guess it's there if you want to mechanize your player's relationship to the Order of the Heart.
Yeah. And then we've got a list of some of the deities in Greyhawk. This is as good a list as as any. I found it weird that Iuz is the only demigod listed, no Igwilv, none of the good demigods. I like the nice distinction that you have like these really powerful greater gods that don't take an interest in the world, and then it's the more intermediate gods that are in there. Cuthbert has lost his sainthood. He's just Cuthbert of the Cudgel, not Saint Cuthbert.
I guess that makes sense. What would he be a saint of?
Well, I think the hint
who
in
sainted
Greyhawk
him, Matt?
is
Who sainted him? Who
God
made him
did.
a saint?
Cuthbert might have traveled from our world.
I know,
he could be the actual same Saint Cuthbert from like Scotland or England or whatever.
I mean,
which is
made it over my guess as to why they probably took away his sainthood, so that nobody asked the complicated questions that were a lot more amusing when D&D was young, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is, I think, pretty a common change that you see throughout this is that in addition to maybe some grammar corrections and proper names, like St. Cuthbert is now Cuthbert.
D&D has gone woke, Matt. They refuse to weigh in on the... on the schismatic heresies and on the whether or not the Pope has the authority. No, it's yeah.
Yeah, Ekbir has been changed from like a caliphate to a sultanate, right? I mean, a good change in my opinion. I mean, there's you could complain, I guess, that it's gone woke if you were like a insane right-wing person. But I feel like if you're any normal person, you'd be like, wow, that the change makes a lot more sense, and then I don't have to define what a caliph is in this game world that does
every
not
time they do
have
something
Islam.
like this, it's usually a good decision, but like at worst, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't affect you at all. Like I agree with Matt. Like sultanate makes more sense than a caliphate, and also if it didn't, or like it just doesn't matter. It's just like not a big deal. It's just what you call the
exactly. Like Blackmore is now Arn, which you know a nod to Dave Arneson, right? Gygax, I think, originally just put in a place called Blackmore as a nod to Dave Arneson's Blackmore games, and didn't quite. There wasn't a lot of information other than hey, it's a weird lawless land. Maybe there's the city of the gods there, and it's exactly the same. I think there might have been Arn the Fighter that was a stand-in for Dave Arneson, and so now the land is just named after either him or his character. I like that. On to that, so after we're introduced to the gods of Greyhawk and these conflicts and a little bit about the premise that I think gets 50% of the things right about Greyhawk, we move to the free city of Greyhawk as a great place to have a home base or a starting location or a eventual place your players want to go. And then we have a pretty substantial section and the back of our pullout map on the city of Greyhawk. This is the section that draws a lot on the Greyhawk, the city of Greyhawk folio. So let's talk about the Gym of Flaness.
Okay, this is not new, but I really do have to just highlight that there's the High Quarter, the Garden Quarter, the River Quarter, the Foreign Quarter, the Artisans Quarter, the Slum Quarter, and the Thieves Quarter. Matt, that is 7 quarters.
Yes.
There should be 4, Matt. They're quarters.
Yeah. I think if you look at the old city, right, that originally there's still 5. No, I guess that doesn't work. Okay, I think if the original city has 4, and you can see there are new additions to the north and south. So so that's how I would explain it to my
just being
players.
a pedant. Listen, my city has 5 quadrants, so it does happen. I know. I'm just.
So I would recommend
before we jump into Greyhawk proper. Sorry, the gem of Flaness. There's one more thing that I got to gripe about. There's lots of good information on the city here, but there's a city overview section before you get into any of the quadrants or the locations. And in the city overview section, there's 2 subsections on the city walls and the city gates, and these comprise 6 total paragraphs on the composition and size and guards and etc.
Actually, Rob, Can you go ahead and read the second paragraph under city walls, starting with the walls are patrolled?
Yes,
Will you read that paragraph?
Yes. The walls are patrolled regularly. During daytime, the typical patrol is one sentry, a guard, placed every 300 feet along the top of the wall. At night, the guard patrol is quadrupled, with 2 sentries posted every 150 feet along the wall. Also at night, torches light the wall top at 150-foot intervals between the guards, so each sentry station is 75 feet from a torch in every direction.
The wall top is regularly patrolled, both where it borders the city and where it runs between the 2 city districts. During daytime, the typical patrol is 1 watchman placed every 300 feet along the top of the wall. At night, the guard complement is quadrupled, with 2 sentries standing together every 150 feet along the wall. Also at night, torches are maintained on the wall top by the Lamplighters Guild. These torches are placed at 150-foot intervals, but staggered from the guards so that each sentry station is 75 feet from a torch in each direction, quoting from the Free City of Greyhawk, 1989.
Well, I like that better. It mentions the Lamplighters Guild. I love a Lamplighters Guild.
So, as you can see, there's a ton of information that is maybe not the most useful, though in a longer book it would be. And you can see, I mean, listeners, see if you can spot the 6 differences between the paragraph Rob read and the paragraph I read. It's copied and pasted from the Greyhawk, Jim of Flynn S by Douglas Niles. So, who is not credited here.
Yeah.
Gary gets credit. Gary gets a ton of credit, but no credit to Douglas.
They did this earlier in the DMG, right? We mentioned this in the first part of our review. There's some stuff that was taken directly from another writer and no credit given, but whatever. The thing about this...
this one, they own Douglas's work, I suppose.
In the last one we put it up, they own too. It's
just a courtesy,
It's just a nice thing it would be a nice thing to do. The thing about that, and whatever, describe the city walls and gates in detail if you want. I don't care. But just the next section is on city neighborhoods, and each of the neighborhoods gets 1 sentence. I guess maybe this is a petty complaint, but I think I would prefer less information on the guard patrol regiment of the city walls and more on what's happening in the artisans' quarter. I think that might be more interesting to me both as a reader and as a potential GM. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's like you only have 30 pages, right? To talk about Greyhawk. And obviously people are taking stuff from the old sources and editing it down. And, the paragraphs we read are almost verbatim the same. It's like if you've only got 30 pages and you are spending time editing and changing things, shouldn't there be someone on your team to say, well, is the page on the city walls and the city gates the absolute, is this better than the list of names of proprietors of inns that we could have included, or a little table of interesting locations, right? You look at the map, right? And you see this crazy building that's a 3-sided pyramid that has no doors on it. And you're like, wow, that's really interesting. Wouldn't it be better to have a table that's like, hey, this is the Magic University of Greyhawk, and there's no doors? What mysteries could be in there? And, that would be much more inspirational to a GM reading this than repeating the city wall information.
The thing that just sticks out to me is we read a lot of these campaign books and gazetteers. And if you read something like one of our favorites, like Sharn, City of Towers, or even something like Matt Mercer's Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, right? You can tell that the authors, that the writers are excited about and interested in the world. That they're just sort of overflowing with information about all of these things, sometimes to their detriment. Sometimes they get caught up on things that are not that interesting, but it's just, there's so much stuff. You can tell that there's more that's been included. This feels like the writers are not that interested in Greyhawk and not that excited about it, and that they really haven't thought very hard about it or added very much. And there are lots of places where they're doing what appears to me to be like the bare minimum. That is the case with a lot of the DMG and a lot of the new books. Is a lot of it is copied from older versions with minimal updates. There are areas where you can see that like somebody put some effort in, but like, look, the design staff is either like worked to the bone or just absolutely given no time or editorial capacity or something, because it just the writing and information of the DMG and most of the recent books feels very, very poor to me, and this is just kind of like emblematic of it.
Yeah, so like the city, after the overview of the neighborhoods, we're given like 6 locations within the city.
And this part's good. This is the best part, in my opinion.
Except 2, are taken straight from, the city of Greyhawk,
right,
published in 1989.
They took the right part, yeah.
Maybe there's some like name and gender changes. Maybe there's like one name added. But again, it's like, why did you choose these 6, right? 3 of them are inns. And if you read the City of Greyhawk, there's like 30 inns. And they picked 3. I don't know if they picked the most interesting ones. They added that there's a rivalry between the Black Dragon and Silver Dragon Inn that I don't think was in the City of Greyhawk. And then they added, there's one thing in this that is new, which is the magic shop Unearthed Arcana. Everything else is either referenced in a table or has its own paragraph already in the City of Greyhawk.
I can tell you why they picked what they did, Matt, or I can guess as to what it is. And that's that they needed to have a location for every potential character background to have a link to. And so they picked 3 inns, a library, a couple of temples, and a magic shop. That is, as far as I can tell, like their remit as designers was to come up with locations for every included character background and provide a reason why your players might have a link to somebody in the City of Greyhawk.
And if you go to, Greyhawk, Jim of Laness book, there are so many more interesting ones, right? Like the Thieves Guild, which is still very powerful, but it's kind of like down on its luck at the moment. And maybe it's ripe for new leadership, or the dock workers union, right? Who have this deal with the Thieves Guild where, if anyone robs, if it doesn't hire them to like unload their ship, they will get robbed. And, or as I mentioned before, the magic school with no doors, or Grey College, the very finest educational location in the world of Orth. Or like the University of Greyhawk, which is way, way more down on its luck. But they have like games and college rivalries. There's a details on like one of the fraternities of the university that's full of hooligans that are constantly causing problems. It's just, I would not pick these 6, and I wouldn't. The new one they added, Unearthed Arcana, Rob. This is going to make you a little mad. Did you notice who the proprietor of Unearthed Arcana, the magic item shop?
I remember that he was an adult copper dragon. Morley? What am I missing? What is going to make me mad?
Morley the wizard in the 80s was TSR's official mascot that often appeared in commercials. That would be like, welcome to the world of Dungeons & Dragons. A little cartoon wizard would show up on the commercial, and then, live action actors are, in the background playing D&D, having fun.
I am Morley, the wizard, introducing you to adventure. It's Dungeon Fantasy Board Game. This family is on a challenging adventure in a scary dungeon, seeking treasure guarded by strange and wonderful monsters. Take it from Morley, Dungeon and Dungeons & Dragons games from TSR play better. After all, we are the game wizards.
So it's a little wink in the nod to everyone who really enjoyed those commercials from 35 years ago.
This reminds me of the adventuring party that they included in the PHB that, references things from the 80s that none of their players are ever going to know about. I mean, like, who is this for? there got to be like 5 people in the world, and they all work at Wizards of the Coast, who find this like delightful. It's just very bewildering. And this reminds me, Matt, of everything that they did whenever they were bringing back the lore or setting information about Sigil or about Planescape, where they just pulled from the old books, but only some stuff, and then they condensed it down and somehow made it worse. And that's just, it's very, very disappointing, you know?
Yeah, the question about the nostalgia, like who is it for? You would have to be, I guess, to remember these commercials like over 50, and in the subset of people who like were watching TV in the United States during this time, and it's not like these commercials ran all the time. It's just, if we know like from Wizards' own internal surveys that they released, the player base is much, much younger than that, right? It's younger than, we're too young to remember it, and we're old.
Yes.
And the player base is younger than us. So it can't be nostalgia for them. And then people who it might be nostalgia for, I don't see, one, why you would be nostalgia for a commercial. And then 2, are those people even playing, 5th edition? And even if you could chum them in with this nostalgia, it wouldn't be that many people, because so many more people play D&D now than in the like 90s.
It's very strange. This isn't like a fan, like one of our Discord listeners mentioned that there's like a D&D fandom, which I think is like correct, but like the way that it exists is not like, it's not like if you're in the Star Wars fandom, right? You've gone back and you've watched like the original, like you've watched things from like the 70s and 80s, but like a D&D fan is not going back and watching commercials. They're probably not going back and watching the cartoons. They're probably not even going back and like playing the like OG adventures, or they might not be. Like they're people who are fans of Critical Role. They are fans of, the modern iteration of D&D and like what that means. And like if you're trying to like activate your fan base, this is just like not it. Like Matt said, we are too young. Like I don't remember any of this stuff. Like I know about a little bit of like the 80s D&D stuff because of just osmosis and being a nerd about this stuff, but like we are too young to appreciate many of the references that appear in the new set of books.
Yeah, it's a baffling decision. I don't understand who this is for. All right. Should we talk about the final section, which is our abbreviated gazetteer to Eastern Flaness, the continent of Flaness, where Greyhawk is set?
What are your thoughts on the Greyhawk gazetteer as a whole?
Yeah, the Greyhawk gazetteer as a whole is I think a great starting point. Again, we talked about how this is the total pages, the same pages as the World of Greyhawk folio, which has detailed information on all locations. This has a nice table with a one-line introduction to every spot in Greyhawk, and then some highlights of the most interesting places, like the Great Kingdom, or the Rift Canyon, or the Wild Coast.
And if you want to run, like I said at the beginning, if you want to run something like the Lost Caverns of Solgekanth, or the Ghost Tower of Inverness, or the Tomb of Horrors, you're given a little bit to work with here. You're given, I think, a starting point. You will probably want to go look up one of the older sources, but you have the tools here, I think, to put in a campaign or a part of a campaign together. It's just not like, it's not a lot.
Yeah, no, it's not a lot. I think the most useful parts here are like the guides to, here are some cool themes and conflicts for each section of the world guide, which is not something the folios really have. That's useful, but again, this is not enough that you can run Greyhawk just with this. I would recommend getting any of the other Greyhawk books. I will point out that the like Living Greyhawk Gazetteer from 3rd edition is set in the future compared to this. This one's set in the classic 576 of the original books, so keep that in mind if you get the new stuff. And I suppose Wizards has opened Greyhawk as a thing that you can publish on the DM's Guild. So, maybe we'll see some exciting fan-made Greyhawk stuff now.
Yeah, I would say that if I let's drive towards a conclusion here. If I am optimistic about anything, and there are some things that I'm a little optimistic about, it's what Matt just said, that they open this up. You can write adventures or campaigns in Greyhawk, and D&D Beyond has started to include third-party adventures or sources in a way that they haven't in the past. And I don't want to overstate this because Wizards has given me nothing to believe in or be optimistic about. But if there is a positive take on this and positive take on the future, it's that because they are so lazy and so disinterested in their own game, that they are maybe like letting other people take the reins in a way that could produce something more interesting in the future. And that is what I will be keeping my eye on with both like Greyhawk and just like future Wizards or D&D 5e adventures.
If I'm reading the tea leaves correctly from the interviews I've watched with Wizards publishers, it doesn't seem like they're going to make a full 5th edition Greyhawk Gazetteer or an adventure set in Greyhawk. Again, even the most Greyhawk adventure, right, Princes of the Apocalypse, is set in the Forgotten Realms. You have to do extra work if you want it in Greyhawk. It doesn't seem like the adventures will be returning to Greyhawk anytime soon. However, the Internet Archive, God bless them, has pretty much all of the important Greyhawk books available for borrowing or for free. So that's awesome. So check those out is my recommendation.
Yeah, check those out. Go find them. I didn't want to harp on this because there's no point. But like the other problem with Greyhawk for me is that just like this is the most generic of generic fantasy settings. And that's not like, it's not bad in and of itself. There are other like kind of generic settings that we like, but I do think you have to be deliberate about it. And most of this stuff was written 50 or 40 or 30 or 50 years ago. And a great deal of fantasy writing and world creation has happened since then with a lot of really cool and interesting ideas. And I shouldn't complain, but like, I wish Wizards still cared about doing anything new or interesting. I wish that they would use their vast resources to hire somebody, to pay somebody to create new worlds or update their old worlds. And that's, I no longer feel very strongly about this. I'm past my capacity for disappointment, but I do still wish that we had gotten something else than this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't seem like Wizards is ever going to make a new world, but I think, Greyhawk, if you're interested in a contrast that is still classic fantasy from the Forgotten Realms, it's definitely not high fantasy. It's definitely a grittier, more Mad Max-ish, things are bad contrast. Check it out. It's you will never find the kind of detailed development. Everything is only loosely sketched. Encourages you to fill out the details. So in that sense, this entry is a perfect addition to the Greyhawk canon because, again, it's loose sketches. And patrons, thanks for listening to this. We were going through the DMG. We had no idea how to fit in this aberration of an example chapter on Greyhawk. I don't think it will teach you how to build a world, but it will give you a brief introduction to Greyhawk. And if things catch your fancy, hopefully you will go and look at some of the other published full books on Greyhawk.
To be clear, I prefer Greyhawk to the Forgotten Realms, not by like a lot, but I think it gives me more to work with as a GM. And yeah, this isn't going to help you run a campaign, and you're going to need to do additional work, but there is a lot to love about some of those old adventures, and many of them take place in Greyhawk, and so there is something useful here if you want to go and do an update or a revisit of something in Castle Greyhawk or Tomb of Horrors or something like that. So besides, if you've got the DMG, here it is. So might as well make something of it.
Yep. All right. Thanks again for supporting the show, everyone. We appreciate your Patreon dollars. It lets us keep doing this. If you have ideas and things you want us to talk about, feel free to drop us a line on one of the mini channels, Patreon, our email, dmofnone@gmail.com, or on our Patreon Discord channel.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.
You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life.